Hey everyone, welcome to episode 117 of the Ceres podcast. I'm your host Stelios and the founder and director of Ceres Pure Food Innovation. As we get closer to Christmas, we have noticed an upswing in sales. The whole year towards the end of the last 3-4 months has been pretty steady anyway. However, everything is taking longer to source and manufacture. We do think this will settle out over Christmas. So you may notice also that some of our packaging is different. It has been increasingly difficult to source the same packaging, but our main goal, as always, is to make sure that what's inside is great and consistent and just the way you like it. So our focus is always going to be, are the ingredients that you are paying for what you asked for, and that's our goal as always. So the curry sauce tubs will be, well, the curry sauce, shall I say, will be coming in poly bags, food grade, all of that. They're great. It's just to make sure that we can carry on with the supply. And also we have some new batter bags coming through the system too at some point, probably about 6 to 7 weeks away. So we may need to dip onto just a normal brown bag for a little bit. But yeah, that's by choice. We wanted to sort of update the Yorkshire batter mix and the natural gold batter mix to make it more in line with the natural batter mix that you all would have seen. If you're a regular listener of the Ceres podcast, you may think that some of the updates are repetitive or you don't need them. You can just skip over them. It's all good. It's just that if we don't have the updates, then I'll get a message and someone saying, oh, I didn't know you did this. And there we go. So special offer for this month is 20% off the Ceres gravy mix. Just log on to our website, pop in the gravy into your basket, use the code November 2021. That's the digit November 2021. We are coming to the end of November, obviously, and I don't know when this episode is going out, so it only lasts till November, and then December's code comes out. So best way to get all the codes is just to be in the mailing list. It will be in the show notes, so just head there, jump on the mailing list. We only send out 1 email a month. We've sent 2 out in the past if there's been some form of emergency or we couldn't get everything into, 1. So very rarely do we send out 2. So for me, if you really want to keep on top of the latest news and to get discount codes, get on the mailing list. As you may have well noticed, we have started slotting in these ads at the beginning of the podcast. We will never insert the ads in the middle to break the conversation because that would be well annoying. So this episode introduction, I wanted to talk about the fish cake mix. Seeing as we've got Mitch Tonks on as well, and he's a big seafood guy, fish prices are through the roof. How can you get more profit out of the same thing you buy? Everyone listening to this podcast is probably really busy. I know that. You balance the need for making more profit by selling unique food to customers. And in my view, you should make profit when you're closed and sales when you're open. Let's take our thought process to butchers for a moment. They don't only sell fillet steak or prime cuts of meat. They sell multiple cuts. And if they go, they sell by weight. They're not just going to say to a customer, oh, here's an extra 40, 50, 100 grams on me. It just doesn't happen unless they want to offload the meat anyway. So if they have an abundance of low value, meat, let's say, things that don't cook as well, what do you think they do with it? They're not going to just bin it. No, they want to turn it into £8 a kilo. And they do that by mincing it, making sausages, using it for barbecue. Well, the Ceres fish cake mix is the solution to increasing your profits on your premium product of fish. Why give customers more than they deserve and ruin your gross profits? You can trim the fish to the perfect weight and size and not worry about what to do with your trimmings. The fish cake mix is the ideal ingredient to allow you to make the right margin on your primary sale and loads of extra margin on homemade fish cakes. By making homemade fish cakes, you can increase profits and sales at the same time. I know what you're thinking. Well, I can just use the potatoes or chips that I have on site. The fact is that by the time we even brought them to the boil, you'd be finished using the Ceres fish cake mix. Energy costs are through the roof. Why would you stand there having potatoes on the boil for an hour when you can do the whole mix in 15-20 minutes? We have also put together so many recipes to get you started. You'd be crazy not to increase loyalty and profits by serving homemade fish cakes, unique to your business. Some recipes include haddock and black pudding, salmon fish cakes, Asian-style fish cakes, cheese croquettes, and so on. I could be here all day listing off the recipes, but I've got better things to do, and so have you. So increase your sales and profits today. Order the Ceres Fish Cake Mix from thewildofceres.com or from one of our wholesalers. Today's episode is with Mitch Tonks. Mitch is driven by a passion to enthuse, cook and inspire others to enjoy seafood. His advice focuses on sourcing the freshest fish, preparation techniques and simple, no-fuss cooking. His method is one of practical, no-frills techniques that actually work. Mitch was born in 1966 in Weston-super-Mare. Mitch spent the first 24 years of his life living by the sea. After working as an accountant, he decided to stop being an accountant, jump into seafood and become a specialist fishmonger in Bath. Mitch is a prolific and award-winning restaurateur. His restaurants include the Rockfish Grill and Seafood Market, the Seahorse in Dartmouth, and he also was the founder of Fishworks back in the day. He's got numerous cookbooks, been on TV loads of times, loads of podcasts, loads of radio. You know, he's someone that you want to talk to when there's something going off in the fish industry. He really knows his stuff. You know, he's a true artisan. And, it's interesting talking to Mitch. And, I like the fact that he's sort of, although he's in the fish and chip industry, he's in the fish industry, really. He's in the cooking and catching and you name it. Anything seafood and fish, Mitch is going to know something about it. And if he doesn't, he'll know someone that does know something about it. So I really enjoyed this episode with Mitch. Anyway, on to the episode. I really hope you enjoy it and let us know what you think. Mitch, welcome to the Ceres podcast again.
It's good to be here. It really is good to chat to you again.
Well, it's actually good for me to be here because I'm in Joe's bar. And last time we did it in the cantina.
Yeah, so the canteen is just across there. And here we are in Joe's bar, which is one of my favourite places of the Seahorse.
We've already had a brandy.
We've always had it. Well, yeah, hang on a minute. Of course we've had a brandy. And that's what you do when you come to Joe's bar. So Joe's bar is named after a great friend of mine who... I spent many amazing years with as a friend and as a customer. And very sadly, Joe and his wife passed away. And I figured that this bar would be a fitting place to name it after him. Mm. And what was really interesting is that Joe was an amazing, not only an amazing guy, he was a fan of Jeff Beck, the guitarist. And in the last few years of Joe's life, Jeff used to eat here a lot, and I was always trying to hook the pair of them up. And the day that we finished building the bar, or building this little tiny space, Jeff Beck walked in and ordered a martini on the first day of opening. So it was like one of those kind of nice ley lines of life where
everything just
worked out. Yeah,
the stars were aligned.
They were aligned. It was cool. Yeah. So it's got some soul to it, right?
It does. No, definitely. And a little thing actually. So when I first came here in 2009, I think it was October. I've written that down, and. I wasn't really into whiskey. I just started to dabble into it a little bit. And I came here the night before I was doing the podcast with you. I went to Rockfish, had something to eat, came here, had a drink. And I think it was the girl that was working here said, "Oh, you should try this whiskey if you're just getting into it." And it stayed one of my favourite whiskies. It was called the Timorous Beastie.
Really? I've never come across that.
Yeah, it was here somewhere.
Well, I've just started to get into whiskey. I think it's an age thing. I mean, it's taken me all my life. I've hated whiskey. And then over the last year, I'm like... I quite like whiskey.
Yeah, something about it. And then I went to Edinburgh the week after, and I said, you know what? I was in Dartmouth last week, and I had this whiskey, Timorous Beastie. She goes, "We've just got it in," and this is in Edinburgh. And then I had like 3 or 4, and I wobbled back to my room that night. It was a bit hefty. But it was a nice whiskey. Timorous Beastie. It was a 45 ABV or something. It was pretty hefty. I'm going to find it,
because I think the whole whiskey thing was I sailed up to Scotland at the beginning of the year and kept my boat there.
Wow. And
so I've been enjoying sailing around the islands, which has been fabulous. I never realised Scotland was such a beautiful place.
Yeah.
And only have a little tiny boat, but it's been lovely to explore the beaches and whiskey. And yeah, I mean, it's quite nice getting back on board and picking up a bottle from your day's visit and then having a little bit of water.
What's your favourite so far then?
It's made by Glen Scotia.
Okay.
And it's called Victoriana.
Ah.
And the reason I like it is because it's aged in Pedro Jimenez barrels.
Yep.
So you get a little bit of sweetness to
Sherry
it, which
casks.
is really, really good. But weirdly, I've also got into kind of like the really ropey Lafroigs, which that's where I started. And
It's
sort
quite
of
peaty, smoky.
really kind of like on the edge. But I got into it through that and didn't like it at all. But now I've come back to that.
Okay.
And especially with a cigar.
Yeah. I really want to try Ardbeg, which is a very peaty. I just want to try it. I don't know why. I think when I go to London next, I think I'm just going to go to...
You've got to try it.
Yeah,
I mean, all those
go
things.
to Mr. Fogg's and just try it.
Just go in there. But, the interesting thing is, I'm sure there'll be plenty of whiskey drinkers out there listening to this thinking these guys don't know what they're talking about. Which is absolutely true.
Yeah.
But somebody was in a place where I bought a bottle, was just saying add water, with a little pipette, and add more and more water until you get it to your liking.
Yeah.
And I really love the whole thing that he talks about, which was like, it's your whiskey, you do what you want with it. So I've ended up adding a little more water than I normally would with spirit, but I really like the lengthening the flavour, so I have a longer drink, and I get to enjoy it, and I still get to enjoy that lovely high of a spirit.
I'm a big fan of ice in whiskey, just a couple of rocks, because I'll either like cold drinks or hot drinks, somewhere in the middle. I'm not a big fan of drinks in the middle. I'm
a middleman.
Oh,
I like to have kind of room temperature water. I don't like ice.
You see, I like it spicy.
Ice dulls.
It's either got to be a hot tea or a cold something, and so a cold whiskey for me is quite nice. I don't know why, but if you do like anything like your sherry cask, my mate, he really got into whiskies in sherry cask, and I bought him a bottle of Redbreast, and it's an Irish whiskey, and it's just finished in casks that are sherry casks, and it's just so nice, and he just loves it, and. Very surprised. I never thought I'd like whiskey. I think
it's like a lockdown thing. Everybody was looking for something to do, right? And then suddenly you discover...
Not for me anyway. I think mine is a having kids thing. So when my first kid came along, I got into coffee. When my second kid came along, I got into whiskey. If I have
a heading in a certain way, Stelios.
So that's why we're not having any more kids. I'm not sure what's after that.
Whatever's next. Yeah. No, I've always been a brandy drinker, and I've always,
I didn't know.
Friends of mine would always, I don't drink brandy every day, but I drink it early in the day.
Yeah.
And I always think of spirit in the morning as, one of those really undiscovered parts of life. And I think if more people had a spirit on the way to work or whatever they were doing, they'd actually have a better day.
I was really surprised by that, because after we did our last podcast, it was like, fancy a drink? And I was like, okay. Like, I didn't know what to sort of say. It was like, okay, I'll have one if you're having one. I just thought you meant coffee. And then the brandy came out. I was like...
Well, you definitely have coffee and brandy, but I mean, it's really interesting because people say, God, did you really drink all the time? It's like, no, I just like a brandy with my coffee, usually before 10 o'clock.
The difference is you've changed your lifestyle to suit that to some degree. You're not knocking about everywhere in a car. You're not having 4 or 5 before you jump behind a car. So I think that's the difference, is that you can do those things if you're not being reckless on the other end. So
I think like everything is in moderation with everything you do, and it becomes part of the restaurant lifestyle, and that's it really.
Yeah. So I did a quick search. Rockfish is now up to 9 sites, is it?
Yeah, we're 9 sites.
Yeah.
And it's been fabulous. Obviously terrifying at the start of lockdown. I think for everybody in the industry, there was that kind of moment of, I don't know anyone that's ever closed their restaurants before and still had to kind of look after all their staff and all the other bits and pieces. So I think there was that moment of disorientation, like being thrown into cold water and just being deep and coming up and taking your first breath, thinking, where is this going? But once you kind of worked out the way to the shore and you could kind of get there, and you worked out you could get there, actually it was probably one of the most liberating, amazing times of my life. And I know that's not true for everybody, but it was definitely of that for me, and I think I was very lucky.
There was a sense of, I don't know what, it was almost like rebuilding a business without it going bankrupt to some degree. It was almost like everything came flooding through, the fear of failure, just everything. Especially for me, like I'd spent so long building up this business, and then it could be wiped out or taken away through no fault of my own or anybody actually, just the environment and what was going on. And that there was that 3 weeks where the government still hadn't announced much. Like they would just say, like, wait, hang on, we're just trying to fix everything, and you just didn't know what you were doing really. But then afterwards, there was this liberating force almost,
But I think that was a joy in some ways. Is like when you're faced with the end, right? I mean, then you do your best thinking, and because you are at the end. And I think there was like the first week I found very stressful, and then I remember all my kids came home, which was really lovely. And on the first Friday, they were sort of noticing that Dad was getting a bit stressed, and they just sort of said, Dad, tonight you're going to sit down, we're going to light the grill, we're going to eat some beef, Bronte's going to choose the wine, and we're just going to have a really nice meal. And it was so lovely because I sort of sat there behind my glasses, in tears, and realised the kind of power of that, of what we do in hospitality is when we take care of people. And over the next few weeks after that, I just thought we can do anything. And I think in the end, at the end of the pandemic, I think the biggest realisation I had was that we as a group of people were capable of far more than I ever imagined. And I think that's what the pandemic opened up for people. It just unlocked power.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, for those people that, I always find that a lot of people want to sort of focus on the negative, but I think there is some people that I've met that have just really focused on the positive. And it was a chance to blow off some cobwebs. Anything that wasn't working before, ditch it, and just start fresh and just say, you know what, I think a lot of people just rebuilt their businesses over that period, or whatever it was, got into hobbies that were really good for them and so on. But yeah, I can understand it wasn't great for everybody,
It wasn't. I think, a pretty dark times if you're a very social person or living on your own. I'm sure there are many stories to tell. And it was interesting because my team met every single day, and all the non-exec directors, our executive team, we all got on the call together every morning, 10 o'clock, and we shared intelligence, experiences. Will Beckett, who's our chairman, was sharing what was going on with him, and all the non-execs were sharing what was going on there, and we were obviously talking to all of our people in the company, and we were determined to make sure that everybody was incredibly well looked after. And I think that it was in those times that we did our best work. It was like, I'm lucky enough to work with the most amazing bunch of people I've ever worked with, ever, and some of them have been around a long time. But what was really amazing is not just what we did with the business. There were a couple of our directors that were also talking to other companies, helping them. And this was just one of the offshoots of COVID. John Barnes, one of our non-exec directors, with Laura, who was our marketing director, decided to pull together all the stories of other companies and publish a book called the Kovid Chronicles, which details in there how people from sailors to sports companies to restaurant companies to all sorts of businesses changed.
Yeah.
And I just love the fact that people were turning their efforts to other things that eventually would help others. I think that was the key, right?
I've got a copy in my bag.
Have you got it? It's great.
Yeah,
amazing book. It's great.
Yeah, and I'm seeing John on Thursday. I'm really looking forward to it.
Are you doing a podcast?
Yeah, doing a podcast on Thursday.
John is, I'll give him a build up because John is one of my kind of, real heroes in my professional life, and as a guy as well. He's an utterly brilliant person. But I saw him at a conference, and I never go to conferences. I never really like being part of that sort of thing. But I went to this conference, and there was this guy talking with such incredible passion about, sort of breaking the chains, how the restaurant industry was about working in your sites with your people, with your management, and not this sort of, glorified head office somewhere that sort of projected down how it was all going to be. I was really inspired, and I stopped him on the stairs and said, look, I'd love to just carry on talking with you. And that was 25 years ago. And we kind of kept in touch. And anyway, he was eating the Seahorse one day, and I said, look, John, it's so nice to have you here. I haven't seen you for so long. How do you, I've got this new thing starting called Rockfish. Love you to get involved. He said, I've got grandkids, I'm retired. And a year later, when Rockfish was running, I said, look, John, just come down, just have a look at what we've done. I think you'll like it. I'd really love to chat with you. And he came down, he said, oh my God, this is just great. How can I help? And, and he's just been brilliant. So you are going to have one of the most inspiring podcasts.
I am really looking forward to it because he's just a great gentleman, really. Like even just like dealing with him by email, it's just you can tell very professional, very polite, very gentlemanly. Yeah. Just
But what you can't account for, and I think is something that never changes in the world, regardless of how fast the internet gets or how clever you are, years of experience add up to more than absolutely anything. And I can talk to John about any subject, from refinancing to a waiter to food on the plate to how I build the team. He's seen it all, and like, that's all you need to know. And there are very few people that have covered all those subjects in their careers that can pass it down.
Yeah, no, that's great. It's great to have someone like that by your side, isn't it? Really.
Always, yeah.
You know, and I guess we all need those people, because you can't grow a business without mentors to some degree.
Well, it's mentors and teams.
Yeah.
So you I don't think you kind of choose mentors. They, like, you get it or you don't get it, and you get that kind of, you've got to listen to those kind of people and really take on board stuff. But I think our business definitely survived because of team. There's no question at all that not only do we survive, we're I think flourishing. And I had to do a lot of learning as well. It was time for me to grow as an individual and think about how I could think about the business differently in my interaction with people. Yeah. And to be honest, without COVID, I wouldn't have done that. I would have always been the guy that was micromanaging the curtains not being open, or this being right and this being done, and actually realise that other people can do that shit too. You've just got to kind of allow that freedom and just pass down the delegation as much as you can and help other people to grow. And I kind of always believed that, but it became more and more sort of apparent.
I'd go as far to say that almost mentors choose you.
Yeah, they do. I mean, I don't think there must be a greater honour than somebody writing to you saying, would you help me for these reasons? What a joy to know that somebody likes what you do and actually is prepared to listen to you and go along. And I mean, one of the things we did during this part of the journey was I decided that we were so much more capable of doing what we were currently doing. How do we go from X to Y, which is we're going to create something really amazing, even more amazing in the future? And we brought in a team of coaches to help us, or a couple of coaches, and I spoke to a few other CEOs that were kind of like, how did you get your business from X to Y? And they said, look, we need coaching, we need helping. And I think that every entrepreneur and independent businesses aspiring to grow into a new area should take other people in as coaches.
I think a lot of people, unfortunately, see coaching as like a negative, like they're not good enough. Whereas, all the Fortune 500 CEOs have mentors.
That is a reason.
They have coaches. Great golfers or tennis players don't get better just by playing on their own. They've got someone who's saying, "Oh, that backhander, you can maybe try this or try that," and it's constant. So I think, why is it in business or everyday life that nobody actually considers having a coach?
Well, there's like technical coaching, isn't there? Like, learn to make this sauce, how to hit that ball. And there's coaching where you can sit down and talk about, I want to do this, and how do I go about it? And somebody just challenging you on it and giving you a different perspective. But really the answers lie in this whole point of coaching, right? Is we know what we want to do, we just don't know how really to pull it out of ourselves and articulate it. And I can say that our team was amazing before. Our team is like, we're ready to play like the Premier League. We are just so honed and we're honed because we're all having coaching to help us become this group of people for the next stages.
So obviously 2019 we had the beginning of COVID-19, we had the beginning of the Brexit, or the end of the European Union. Do you feel like a different person after all that in some ways? Yeah.
Immensely. I think that whole divisive thing of Brexit was awful for all of us in whichever side you're on. And COVID was kind of like, as I say, a period of amazing opportunity. But now I just feel like, for me personally, our business and the world is an incredibly different place.
Yeah.
And so many new projects were born, opportunities, everything else. And in some ways, I think COVID has been a kind of reset button for society, for people. And sadly, there's been a lot of suffering, which is always the other side to the coin. But generally, I speak to more people that think, my God, this is amazing. And I think about my own life, having kids since I was 19, 20 years old, always having responsibility, never had a gap year. Suddenly someone said, do you want to stay at home? It's like, yeah. And what, the world stops and there's no other shit around you? And you're like, yeah. So suddenly you're able to change things and do things. And I always felt like our business, how could you stop a moving train? You can't. But it stopped. So we're able to recalibrate. We were able to think about it. What did it look like? What did it do? What other opportunities were out there? And also, I wrote a cookbook, and I was able to advance my canned fish projects and also rethink. I think a lot about our planet, sustainability. We all do. It's not like unique to me or anything else, and it's not just a thing. I think we've all cared. But I've always especially cared about seafood and worried about wastage and how it was valued by people. And so we're able to kind of like dream up new ways of dealing with some of those problems.
Yeah. And how did you, like initially, COVID lands, you've got a load of this fish you've got to move, and then you just decide to sort of just sell it on the harbour? Was it as easy as that, or was it quite challenging in some ways?
Well, I mean, we only had an interest in a very small boat, but I mean, the skipper at the time, Nick, he was kind of like, I'm going out fishing, what do I do with the fish? So I called Kirk, who was our exec chef at Rockfish, and said, look, Kirk, we're going to turn up on the quay, and let's got onto the Laura and Vig and her team, so send an email out, we're going to turn up on the quay at 3 o'clock and we're going to sell the catch. We had no till, we had nothing, we had boxes, and I was amazed at the people just queuing around the corner, just with bring your own carrier bag. This has kind of made you realise how possible it is to do something very raw. And we sold out that fish within hours. Not only that, we trebled the value of the catch for the skipper, which was really amazing. And then we started calling other people, as asparagus growers in Cornwall that I didn't know personally, St Enedoc, just really lovely people, and all this stuff was sprouting out of the ground, and you think, what are they going to do with it? There is nowhere to go. So we started just saying, look, how much do you need to make? And I can't remember what it was, £3 a bunch, £4 a bunch, I can't remember. And I said, just send a load down, and they would send it down to us, and we would queue up, and we would just sell it to people at cost. And you realise that whole community, people working together, I think people were just thinking more about others than themselves, which is really wonderful. And then we made, got all the team in because they were bored, making fish pies, selling them for the food bank, and raised £2 or £3 grand in a day for the food bank. But what was really nice is you were building relationships within your community. Our staff were coming in to do things voluntarily for their community, and I think that bond really grew, which is really important.
I think, if anything, you gave the team their meaning back, because if they're serving people every day, in hospitality, they're hospitable, they're making people feel, important within the restaurant. And how do you do that when the restaurant's gone and you manage to fill that gap to some degree?
Well, I think the amazing thing about people that work in hospitality, I mean, you get like broadly two types of people. Somebody that just wants a job and is transient, wants to earn some money, and then you have people that like hospitality is in them. I know my job is hospitality. Whatever I do in life, my career is hospitality. I kind of found it a little later in life, but I'm a hospitality person. So you're transient or you're a hospitality person. And the joy of working in a place and working with other hospitality people is like immeasurable, because they are the most special human beings in the world, because their primary thinking is about someone else. It's never really about themselves. They just care that you're
selfless
sitting.
people.
Yeah, they care that you're sitting in a nice place. They care your lighting's right. They care that your food is nice. They care that you're having a nice time and everything's taken care of. I mean, I think that's the joy of it, right? And you see a smile on someone's face when you put a nice bit of food down. You're the type of person that goes, it's just instant gratification. It's kind of a nice circle.
What's your thoughts on, sort of like staff shortages at the moment? Do you see that correcting itself? Do you see people having to think and thinking, what, I'm going back into the industry? Is it a bit of a breather moment?
I don't see it correcting itself very quickly, because I think two things. Hospitality is hard. Anything good is really hard. The industry has not done an awful lot to portray itself as an amazing industry for a million different reasons over the years. Long hours, short pay, kitchen issues, all that kind of stuff. And also there are a whole load of new businesses that are emerging, aren't they? We've never known people able to work at home and do customer service jobs or administration jobs. We've never seen logistics companies grow so quickly that need drivers and people to administer all that goes on there. We've never seen Amazon grow into this amazing thing with the warehouse packers. So the industry is competing with the transient side of people that really, I just want to earn money and have a nice life and make it balanced. And hospitality is hard for that. But the people that will keep hospitality together are the people that have chosen it as like, this is who I am, this is what I do. So my kind of prediction is probably restaurants will, and the hospitality industry will find it harder, and we'll probably have some shrinkage. But the places that are left, of which there'll be many, will be made up of people that are like, I'm a hospitality guy, you come in here, let me pour you a pint, it's the best thing in the world, rather than somebody who's there like,
robot.
I just hate this job, I'm just here for the money.
I think it's interesting because when we talk about staff shortages, I always think back to an article I read probably before 2019, and it was with, again, I mentioned earlier, it was Sat Baines, and he said, there's not a staff shortage. He goes, there is an oversaturation of restaurants.
He was right.
And and even then he called it really early, and I remember reading it, and it was just so profound, like that, you know, the restaurants are everywhere now. They are, you know, or at least some form of hospitality is.
Well, you kind of hit on something as well there, Stelios, which is I've always believed. You know, I was definitely of a growing up, going out was a special occasion. Okay, it's my dad's birthday, my mum's birthday. You know, you got to choose anything you want off the menu. You'd have a nice bottle of wine, but it was a good thing. Then suddenly, over the years, for a million different reasons, that it's cheap to eat out, it's cheaper to eat out than the homes, less washing up, and everything else would all go out. Well, like a £10 meal. When the government have taken £2 of it, £8 left to sort of pay for the food and pay the waiter and the washer-upper and the environment, it's not enough. And the bottom line is, I think people will have to pay more for eating out, but will appreciate it. So it's not a case of like, it's just going to cost you more. I just think people will appreciate going out more and more, and the experience will get better and better, and as it should be.
I think you're right. I think us as a family, we don't really get takeaways a lot. We cook more than we get takeaways because we enjoy cooking at home, but we do like going to restaurants. You know, we like the kids to go out to a restaurant, especially the youngest one who spent from the age of 1 to 3 in lockdown, really. Well, you know, so we need to get him out to socialise him somewhat. You know, you take him to a restaurant and he's like, me go, and he wants to walk off. He doesn't realise he's not at home. So, but I must admit, as a customer in restaurants, I'm getting fussier. You know, service isn't right, and I'm not a complainer, I just won't go back. But I think that's going to happen with a lot of customers. I think they're going to be like, well, if I'm paying this good money, I'm happy to pay that extra money, but I want the service to be better.
You've got to be good. I mean, and I think that's true of any business, and I think there's an oversupply in lots of different things, isn't there? You know, retail. I mean, my grandmother putting lipstick on, and my mum doing the same and getting dressed up to go out and shopping, because when you went to the department store, you know, there was somebody there that would try your clothes on, bring clothes for you, and you know, everything was fine. And I'm not talking about Harrods. That was what happened in Debenhams, in Bristol and Weston-super-Mare and all those kind of places. And in the end, retail gets diluted to kind of a funky environment with some stuff on a rail, and somebody who also doesn't really care about you at all, that just takes your money and you leave. That's not retail. It's just like a showroom. It's you know, and what we're going to get back to is craft. You know, running a restaurant is a craft. It's not a place to come in and abuse people, get drunk, and you know, lean on bars and just ignore people. This is people's craft, and retail is a craft. Walking into a place and somebody knowing their subject about their clothes or the cheese they're selling you or whatever it may be, the fish they're selling you in a fishmonger. I mean, it's like real shit. I mean, it's like you've got to respect that stuff that goes on. And I think everything has got diluted. Everything has got, all the internet has given us is speed. And you know, some people are getting really good on the internet at doing stuff, and I love the fact that I can now deal with great farmers, great people that make cheese and milk, and you know, amazing toilet rolls that come to my house that don't affect the planet. So I love it for all of that. But really, it's kind of diluted kind of skills in industry, I think.
Yeah. No, I just think consumers are going to have to do their bit. They're going to have to pay a bit more to get a bit more. And I think.
And we're consumers, right? I get that.
No, exactly.
I'd rather buy something once, piece of clothing. I mean, not a meal once. So I want you to buy it all the time. But you know, I think we're all getting used to the fact that great things cost more money.
No, it's true. I think, you know, ultimately, pay £30 more for a pair of jeans, they'll last you an extra 2-3 years, won't they?
Yeah.
You know, rather than, you know, get something that looks fashionable today and you end up throwing it away in a few months. Well, you know, my clothes always last me forever because I spend a bit more on them and I don't wear them that much.
The great thing about getting old is you actually don't care what you look like anymore. You just kind of throw stuff on in a day, and then you go out, and that's it.
Yeah, I do it to remind my wife what she married.
There you go. That's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing.
So, you know, what do you think, looking back through it all, what were your biggest business challenges through the Kovid? Was it with Seahorse? Was it with Rockfish? Or was it with both?
I think the challenges were really just in the early days, like how much oxygen did we have?
Yeah.
I knew how much money was in the bank, and I knew how long that would last, and I wanted to make sure that everyone was okay. And I think that we made that two key priorities was like people and brand. So everything we do is going to be through the eyes of what we feel about our brand, but the most important thing is like, are all the people today that work for us okay? And let's just make that our priority, because there could be nothing worse than getting to the end of it when our lives came back and like we had no people, and we got loads of buildings but no people. So we kind of made that priority, and that was a challenge. But we recorded videos every day. We talked to people. We had online glasses of brandy. We kept people connected. We had competitions. We were lucky enough to get people like Angela Hartnett and Fred Sirieix and all sorts of people do little competitions online for all of our people to keep them connected, cooking at home. But I think the biggest challenge was, I think once we were over that first bit, it was like more about, shit, there's a serious amount of opportunity out there. Which ones do we want to pick?
Yeah.
That was the, we didn't have this dark time after the first month. It was like, my God, this is like, can you just see how bright it is out there? Let's just like, we have to just pick our moments.
I knew one chap, and once the Covid landed, let's say, just before the furlough was announced, he'd offloaded all his staff, every single one, just gone. And then afterwards, I remember saying, after the furlough thing kicked in, I said, oh, well, at least that's coming. He goes, well, they're all gone now because they're not coming back. I was like, why? He goes, they didn't want to stay. And I think he saw it, he was upset with them.
Mm.
And I understand he panicked, I get it. Like,
of course.
But I just felt like, I felt sorry for him, but I also felt sorry for his staff. And that was the thing, there was a lot of, in the early days, there was a few bad decisions that nobody could help, because nobody had been there before.
But also I think, you just said it, nobody had been there before. They're pretty desperate times. And I think that whatever people did in the early days, I don't think anybody did.
Got it
right or wrong. It was just a case of doing it. I mean, I remember that very day, I came to the restaurant for lunch. We drank some amazing wines and we smoked some amazing cigars, and it was like just a table of 6 or 8 of us thinking, my God, this could be the last lunch we have in this restaurant. Who knows? We've never been here. And the following morning, because we decided to close well before, we closed a week before actually the mandated closure, and we made the decision to close a week before, knowing that it was inevitable. And I went to have a glass of brandy with everyone in Brixham, and it was the bizarrest moment. We're all leaving. None of us know when we're coming back. None of us know if this place is going to be, what the strangest time in the world. And that was probably the most challenging part, that sort of, unknown really.
Mm-hmm. So the refocus happens. You've diversified somewhat, because of what you learn, I guess, through the good times of COVID, let's say. Let's categorise it as that. The better times of COVID. You did seafood at home. Is that something that's going to stay, do you think?
So what we did was our business plan was always to open more great restaurants, and create amazing jobs, do all the community stuff we do. And then suddenly, I started canning British sardines 2 years ago, and I thought, let's just kind of make this whole thing into something brilliant and preserve British seafood at its best, and create the world's first range of canned British seafood, which we did. Now we've got cuttlefish, mussels from Lyme Bay, cuttlefish from Brixham, mackerel, sardines, and we're moving around the country talking to other producers about who wants to can their products as part of this when it's at its best. And that was one amazing thing which we launched a few weeks ago. But one of the things was like we were like every other restaurant. Let's do some boxes. We did seafood, a sauce, some smoked salmon, tin of our sardines, a few things in there. People just loved getting this stuff at home. But I was under no illusion that it was going to continue when restaurants opened. Fundamentally, people want to go back to restaurants, and it was lovely to see them cooking at home more. I cooked at home more than I ever did, and fell back in love with that kind of wonderful way of life. But actually, I thought I quite like the way the internet is connecting small producers with people and business I'd never heard of with people, heard of before with people. And so I started looking and thinking about how we buy seafood in this country, and I stood in a fishmonger in London, and I looked at this guy setting up polystyrene boxes everywhere, some fresh fish, some old fish, some half-open shrimp, some oysters, some half-cut scallops, some were open, some weren't, some amazing sea bass, a kind of couple of bits of fish that were left open the other day from the day before, smell of fish that you get, guys in a plastic apron. And I just thought, that is what I did in 1996 when I wanted to make selling seafood better. And in 2020, we're still selling fish like this. So I started to think about, it's got to be better. It's got to be a better way. And I've spent 10 months with my team, massive investment, buying new premises, solving the problems of eating seafood at home to make it easy. I want to connect British fishermen to people at home, and it is going to be amazing. And we're launching something in January that I can't really say too much about now, because the marketing people have done an amazing job in putting all the narrative together. Would kill me for letting the cat out of the bag outside of what we meant to. But I really hope this is the way that Britain will enjoy and eat its seafood in the future. Get rid of the polystyrene, get rid of the fish that are meaningless caught, get rid of that negative experience that, you know, big retailers trying to sell fish and not doing it well, making sure that the kind of boutique-y specialist fishmongers are revered as they should be, but also just like people saying, this is just unbelievably good. So I look forward to telling you about it.
How do you, don't give away the crown jewels, but polystyrene and seafood has always gone hand in hand, hasn't it? Like I remember back in the day when we used to get wet fish at my dad's fish and chip shop, it was always in polystyrene. I hated broken polystyrene. It was just the most awful noise ever. So do you think that you can actually do it without something like that?
Stayless, we, you know, as a business, we have our own fishing boat. We buy our own fish off the market in the mornings. We process our own fish and we send it to our restaurants. We don't have a third-party supplier. We're totally fully integrated, and we are 100% not perfect. We're working towards becoming a B Corporation, and I hold that very dear to my heart. That I want us to be a business that it is beyond profit. We're really about the purpose of what we do. And I watch pallets of polystyrene leaving our business to go to schools. We work a lot with chefs in schools and to one or two restaurants. And I kind of made it my mission, our team's mission. It's not my mission, it's our team has made it the mission, that we're going to eradicate polystyrene out of the supply chain. We don't know how. I mean, people have been trying to do it for years, but the bottom line is we have to. There is no way, but we definitely have nailed it for people to eat seafood at home. And we're going to try and nail it within the way we work with our wholesale customers.
What's pretty frustrating about the UK, I think, is that there is lots of different types of packaging, but none of them are perfect. Obviously, there's no such thing. But most things don't actually go to landfill. They go to incinerator. And whether it's bagasse, whether it's cardboard, whether it's polystyrene, it doesn't actually get picked out from what I've been told. It literally just gets taken to an incinerator.
I think that's one of the things, isn't it? It's right. Transparency would be amazing. I couldn't tell you what happens to it. I just use the logic of, here's a big salmon box in my hands. It's been made from some material that is unnatural. It's got to end up somewhere. And by the way, there are 20 or 30 of these things coming through my hands alone every day, yet alone everybody else. So it's going somewhere, right? And we all know what we're all trying to do as a world and as a planet. And I think it's really important that if you have a business that, you know, we're 400 people strong, and I think more and more about, again, this was like a revelation in lockdown, was what can you do with 400 really amazing, focused people that lived a culture of progression, of wanted to make change and wanted to do things, far more powerful than a business that employs 400 people that wants to make a load of money. It just can't be about that. So we have to take responsibility as business owners and turn us all to good use.
Have you given, I know this isn't going to be up your street, it's a completely off the cuff question, but I just remembered it, but have you ever given any thought to cell-based meats? There's a few companies now that are bringing out lab-based, they call it cell-based, but technically protein grown in a lab. And there was one company that I've read about recently, and I'm going to use the word loosely because I don't want to use it as they do, but they think they've perfected cell-based shellfish. and that's shellfish that's grown in a laboratory.
I mean, I don't give it any thought whatsoever because it's not on my radar, and I just think the whole thing is just, I just find it abhorrent. If we as human beings are unable to successfully look after the natural world around us that sustains us, then we haven't even got a hope in hell if you can grow anything in a laboratory. The first focus has to be about welfare, is about eating the right things, about eating less, about protection of ourselves and the environment, our communities, and that's where the focus should be. So I have absolutely no desire to indulge in it or think it's the future. And I would, if I thought the future was my sirloin steak was grown in a laboratory, I'd jump off now.
Wouldn't even try a little bit?
Not interested. Not even interested.
What about the shellfish? Come on,
not interested. It's just ridiculous. I mean, like, you can harvest shellfish successfully and sustainably, and if all of those millions were being put into it, because the only reason why somebody wants to grow it in a laboratory is, one, is they don't think human beings can save the planet, or secondly, if we can grow it really cheaply, then we can make loads of money. It's like, it's not right.
What were you? I don't know if you watched it. Did you give any thought to Seaspiracy? Did you watch any of that?
I did. Yeah. Watched it with real interest, and some pretty shocking and awful stuff in there. Right. I mean, I came off it thinking, God, it's a bit of a shock and awe, but then it's kind of very easy to make a documentary with one side of it, right? I mean, you know, to have a debate, you need two sides of a debate. And the sadness I felt about Seaspiracy, apart from some of the issues in there that would have to be addressed, was that in Britain, like, I only have experience of Britain, mainly, where we have an incredible sustainable seafood movement. We have an incredible fishing industry that has adapted, has shifted, has moved and shrunk, and still kept going. Somehow those people were kind of tainted with the same brush as shark fin soup and, you know, stabbing dolphins and everything else, and actually it's not like that at all. So I didn't think it did a great job for the people that are doing great things, is really it.
Yeah, I think one a Scottish fisherman that we did a podcast with earlier in the year, he says, he just goes, we don't use plastic nets. Because we've never used, not used plastic nets for such a long time. He goes, and in actual fact, we end up picking them up from the waters and bringing them back and binning them. Yeah. And I don't want to get into who did it, but he just goes, well, we don't do none of that. And he goes, and like you just said, we've just got tied with the same brush. And I think the one thing I really felt sad for, because there wasn't any excuse or rhyme or reason, was the definning of the sharks. What a horrible death! It's horrible.
It's horrific. I mean, you know, that as I say, those things in the programme have to be completely and utterly sorted, right? I mean, they're just abhorrent, and nobody in the world wants that stuff to go on. So, and it's good that, you know, brings all of our attention to those things that we may not have known about, but actually we still want to protect our small scale fisheries. I think it's really
I think so. And I think, you know, after chatting to Nathan Outlaw about this, he says, you know, one of the things that concerns him is, you know, a lot of his seafood comes from day boats and, you know, from the local fishermen, and he says, you know, he always worries about large scale fishing or catching, you know, and I guess most people do. And how do we get our heads around that? We all want fish consumption to go up, but then that means catching needs to go up, and, you know.
It depends what large scale fishing is, right? So our British fleet is made up of beam trawlers and day boats, and if we take the beam trawlers out of the fleet, we're left with a pretty small catching effort, and we won't be eating British fish. It'll be for the elite in restaurants. End of story. And I know from talking to beam trawler owners, they are aware of the issues that heavy impact fishing has, and, you know, let's not hide away from the fact that the industry has challenges. Let's all be part of helping it to change, rather than, you know, many restaurants in London, you'll walk around and they'll have line caught, day boat caught stuff, and you're like, I walk around the market twice a week and there isn't that much stuff on the biggest market in England to supply half of London. And people like Nathan, true artisans, somebody who I probably respect as the best seafood chef I've ever come across, and one of the nicest human beings, who is really true to his art of buying off the small boats that land outside his restaurant. But his restaurant's really tiny, and he knows that, but he does it at that level. It isn't going to feed the nation, and he cares about that stuff too, because we talk about it, and communities, and the industry is actively trying to solve the problems, but let's not demonise the industry. Let's not ban beam trawling tomorrow. We all know there's an amazing problem. There's carbon release and all these issues. Let's find a solution. Find a better solution that suits communities, suits the environment. Sustainability isn't just about how much fish is left in the sea. It's about our communities and everything else too.
I think one of my issues is that I think that we are a coastal nation, and I touched on it last time I was with you, and it's not your fault. But I just don't think as a nation we eat as much seafood as we should, especially British seafood. I think our reliance, in my view, comes from foreign seafood. And I think, you know, what's the big five again? We've got prawns, tuna, cod, haddock, and salmon. And you think, you know, prawns are, where are they from? You know, from the other side of the world and so on. And you just think, come on, like, you know, there's so many...
But there is an easy answer, Stelios, is there? I mean, it's like we import 80% of the fish we eat, and we export 80% of the fish we catch. And somebody said to me the other week, surely, you know, one nets off the other. We're a white fish eating nation. That's what we've grown up with, and we don't catch vast amounts of white fish. I mean, you know, I think the number was like 2.5% of the world's cod quota is in England. The rest of it's up in the Barents Sea and other parts of the world. So we're not going to catch enough fish to sustain ourselves. But the main thing is the fish that we catch on the south coast is high value. We catch turbot and sea bass and lobster and crab and scallops and crawfish and all these kind of wonderful things that are more appreciated abroad. And unless we're going to shift people's eating habits to a piece of turbot's 18 quid a portion to eat at home, 60 quid on a menu in London, that's sort of 50 to 60 quid, that's what it's going to be. But that is the fact. And we can't kid ourselves, and I keep hearing it, why don't we get people eating gurnard or red mullet? It's like, there's just not enough. It's high value product that we catch, and unless we switch to that and suddenly stop, you know, make it more of a priority to eat it, it's not like we're wasting British seafood. We just got to shift what we like to eat, and that's a big education piece, and also it's an economical thing. I mean, I prefer to spend all of my money on great food, drive an ordinary car, live in a small house, and wear everyday clothes. Other people don't think that. They think that, you know, their priorities are on different things, and that's the cultural shift that needs to happen. And you know,
at Rockfish, you're always driving, you know, the true word of sustainability. You know, not just where the fish comes from, but everything. Have you seen consumers, after you've sort of educated them a little bit about different species, do you see them trying a bit more, being a bit more adventurous? I
mean, people come to Rockfish for one reason only, because they love seafood. And in the beginning, we were very sort of, we could only sell certain fish under a certain price, and there was a lot of fried fish, and we wanted to grill fish more because it was more versatile, that we could do better things with it and show people. This year during the pandemic, one of the things was, look, there's amazing Dover soles out there, turbot out there, let's put it on the menu at, you know, 30 quid. You know, we'd never had main courses at 30 quid before, just under 30 quid. And we just said, let's just try it, because it'd be amazing to get people eating these species. I mean, they couldn't stay in the fridges, because people, when they go to eat seafood, they want, like, I mean, please just let me indulge. I just want that Dover sole, or I want that lovely piece of turbot. And we gave people access to that. And I think that is the start of it. And then people start to appreciate, like, it wasn't cheap, but it was amazing. And once they appreciate the amazing part of, you know, our not so cheap seafood in the UK, they get it. But there's no point pretending that, don't worry, our British seafood's really cheap and everybody can eat it. It's just not like that,
no.
Right?
We've got to face the reality.
The reality is like boats, people in between it, out catching it. It's a wild, hunted food by specialist people with millions of pounds of their investment in boats. And also the rest of the world wants our seafood, right? So, you know, everything's sold on an electronic clock around Europe and here. They know how good it is. We've got to compete with that to be able to eat it here. And it's not a case of all our fish is caught and sold to others and we just don't eat it. We just haven't got in tune with it yet.
Yeah. When I was chatting to Daniel from Seagold in Norway, I didn't realise, I always thought that when cod and haddock was in short supply, or there's other nations that wanted it just as much as we did, I always thought they meant China. I just thought that was where they meant. But I didn't realise that Boston in America is one of the biggest cod and haddock eating places in the world, and that they compete and are willing to pay top dollar for cod and haddock because they've got a lot of Irish, a lot of expats, a lot of British people there.
But also, I mean, you get a wonderful big piece of cod or a 32-ounce fillet, and you eat those wonderful flakes, and whether you grill it or you fry it, it's a delicious piece of fish.
Yeah.
The problem we've had is fish and chips in the UK was a cheap meal in the war. Therefore, fish and chips has always been that cheap thing. And, you know, I've eaten some fantastic, you know, some of my best moments of eating some fish and chip from, you know, places like, you know, Fred in Bournemouth and, you know, people that are just amazing, and Coleman's and stuff, and the Magpie, and, you know, and any number of scallop shell in Bath. I mean, you could go on, you know, that wonderful piece of fish is just truly and utterly amazing, but it just can't be cheap.
Yeah.
You know, we've got to get out of the habit that going out to eat fish and chips is as expensive as eating a steak. And
how can you get consumers to see that shift when they've been brought up around, oh, just pop into the chippy? How do you know, because it was always the staple, the British staple.
Yeah.
Just like, I guess, if you're in Cyprus, you go for souvlaki, or it's just, you know.
Look, it's wild, it's hunted, it's just controlled stuff, right? We're not going to be able to breed more lambs or breed more pigs or whatever we want to eat. You know, this is in a controlled food. You know, it's a hunted food, and we have to totally respect that, and we have to expect that it's just going to get more expensive. And there's me saying that in a, you know, wanting to make things cheap, but I'm just facing the fact that it's impossible for it to be that.
I suppose we can still be value for money.
Well, but value for money is that amazing piece of 32-ounce fish served by that amazing guy in an amazing place where somebody cared for you. That's value for money, right? Value for money is not cheap. Do we really want to eat fish that's been, you know, landed in another country, China, for example, you know, double frozen, defrosted, shipped back here so that we can have it on the plate for £2? I mean, I just don't think it's the way forward for oceans, for people, for communities, everything. It just isn't that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of fish that's been frozen and defrosted multiple times. It just doesn't float my boat.
It just
really.
isn't the thing. I mean, honestly, Stella, the reason why our restaurants exist by the coast is I truly believe that in the 24 hours from the coast to the next destination, like something in the world takes something out of that fish. You go to the coast in Cyprus, you come to the coast here, you eat a piece of fish in your favourite restaurant on the coast, and you're in seventh heaven. Just like, grill it for me, just a bit of lemon on it, a bit of olive oil, it's amazing. Stick it in a truck and ship it somewhere else, and you're like, it's great, but it's not as great. And there's a little bit of spiritual magic that happens when you eat fish by the coast.
I always say sometimes as well, like, I don't know if it's whether when something touches plastic, I don't know if plastic imparts flavour on something or whether it takes flavour away. But like, for example, in the fish and chip industry, you can get pre-prepared chips, and I always find that there's something quite lacking. I'm not sure, they're not bad, you know, but there's just, I'm not getting that full potatoey flavour. I'm not knocking anybody that uses it, just to be clear. And I think it's the same with, you know, buying a piece of cod in the supermarket that's, you know, tightly packed in between that plastic.
But it's
pack,
not even the plastic in that case, is it? It's like the whole supply chain thing. But you're right in what you say. When you go to a place where, as I was saying earlier about artisans and craftsmen, and you go to a place where they're making their chips at the back and they understand the whole supply chain and seasonality of chips, and they know when they're good and when they're difficult, and towards the end of the year when more sugar's getting. I mean, God, that stuff I've learned. That's why you go there. It's really amazing. If they're not doing that, then they're selling potatoes for another reason. It could be as simple as they don't have the space to make it, but mostly it's because it's either easier, more profitable, or whatever it may be. But I think going to the people, isn't it? It's like,
yeah. For me, I think seafood should be consumed as fresh as possible, and as fresh as, you know.
Or even defrosted. I mean, you know, I am not. I mean, I love, you know, frozen seafood is the way of the world, right? I don't have a problem with frozen seafood, but it's got to go into the freezer as in a really good way, and come out of the freezer in a really good way.
And it had to be good before it got frozen as well.
Completely, yeah. It's not a hospital, and you know, it depends what gets frozen. So I didn't have any problem with anything to preserve, right? You know, freezing preserves, not wasting anything preserves. You know, all that stuff is.
We're not a big nation of salted fish, are we?
Love salted fish. I mean, salted preserved fish. That's why the canning thing came around. But you know, like salted cod. But you know, you try and buy some really good salted cod from Spain, Oh my God, it's hugely expensive because they're going to take big fish, they're going to salt them. I mean, stockfish, which is the wind-dried fish from Norway that the Italians use a lot in stoccafiso. My God, it's one of the most delicious things I've eaten, but that stuff is more and more expensive to produce because the raw material isn't cheap, and then you hang it up and you lose 30% of it, right? I mean, it's like dry aging meat. You're going to lose 30% of it in the dry aging process.
And they're holding cash flow in this process as well. Because that product has a value. It's just sitting there waiting to be sold. But with the tin product, so again, obviously, we see tinned seafood in the UK. Obviously, John West tuna, all of that. It's not like UK as such, but we see it anyway on the shelf. And I was saying to you earlier that when I think of good quality seafood that's tinned, I always think of Ortiz tuna.
Yeah.
So tell me where your product sort of sits and a little bit about how that came to be.
So I mean that a lot of people have asked me, we actually get it canned in Spain, and people say got a shock horror, your air miles, you're sending it across the globe, and my reasoning is that canning seafood is an art, and it's part of people's culture. If you go to Spain, you go to Portugal, Italy, northern France, you'll see fishing ports where excess catch was canned. And where we are in Spain, it's all done by hand. There is no machinery. These are communities that come in, and the mackerel get poached and the head gets taken off and the skin's off, and they fillet them by hand and put them in the tins. There is nowhere. I researched everywhere. I mean, there is a couple of canneries that I've been put in touch with, but they don't do this. And I liken it to charcuterie 20 years ago in England. People were starting to make it, and it was really hard to find a good bit of charcuterie. In fact, we were learning. 20 years later, we make world-class charcuterie, and it's fantastic, but it's taken us learnings. And I'm pretty certain in the future we'll be better at preserving, or we will start to preserve and do it here. But for the time being, I felt like I wanted to work with these small communities which sort of help them. And also thought, we import wine from Spain, we import oranges from Spain. There's so much stuff that comes over from Europe. I mean, blimey, we backwards and forwards every day, right?
So you're bringing a bit of wine with it, are you?
Yeah, it's a bit normal, isn't it? It's like, it's fine, I mean, it's not like we're sending the fish out to some Asian country to have it prepared cheaply.
It's not made by the lowest bidder.
And then shipped back. It's definitely not made by the lowest bidder. It's made by brilliant people, which is what I wanted.
Is it everything in oil and sauce?
Or vinegars, oil, sauces. We're just about to get onto the new second wave. We have another 10 ton of seafood going out on the next shipment, and I'm starting to play with vinegars from Spain that I work with, and trying to and the different chilies and making this into different marinades so that our seafood can, because tinned seafood is not like fresh seafood, right? In the tin, something really magical happens, and when you take it out of the tin, you can't use it like fresh seafood. You have to use it in another way. But the magic imparts something else. I mean, it's truly awesome.
And is it mostly the oil that uses it, mostly olive oil from Spain as well?
Olive oil, a little bit of vegetable oil, but I mean, sometimes it's a vinegar with oil. Sometimes the shellfish is going in brine, so the razor clams and the cockles will go in brine.
Nice.
And it's great.
Yeah, I'm pretty obsessed with anchovies like that. Any anchovy, just in the tin or glass, I'm just obsessed with it.
But you are talking to buy a Cantabrian fillet of anchovy, not a sort of Northern African trawled, machine-produced stuff. A fillet, even in this restaurant, we will pay 50 or 60, maybe 70p a fillet for one anchovy, and you eat them and they are utterly delicious. But the point is that these artisanal, handcrafted, sustainably caught, brilliant bits of seafood are expensive, right?
A few years ago, me and a couple of friends went to a Brindisa event in London, and they brought over a woman from Spain, I think, that worked for, I think it was Spain or Portugal, one of the two, and she was doing anchovies by hand. And I still, every now and then, I just look back at the video because it was just mesmerising, just seeing her just take it apart.
I visited all those factories up there, and I went to a factory called Lowland, which is my favourite, and for me, I don't see them in this country, and but I first came across them in Barcelona, and when I went there, you see this big line of almost like school desks with holes in, and what happens is the anchovy catch comes in, it's almost like a bell rings in the village. The ladies come into the factory and they dump the tins in front of them, and the anchovies come down the line, and they literally lay these anchovies into the tin, shovel them with salt, layer them up. They go into a fridge for 6 to 8 months, and all this, it looks like nuclear waste, all this kind of sort of salt is dripping over the edge. They wash them down every day or so. And then when an order comes in for the anchovies, they come in, they get washed off, they get filleted by hand, they get laid in the trays by hand, and the oil goes on top, and that's it. And you think, no wonder it's expensive, right? I mean, someone's gone out there and caught them, preserved them, you know, and waited 6 months to get your money for them. I mean, that's why they're such beautiful things.
It's quite risky of you today to do something so labour intensive, so love intensive, because for the most part, everyone's just peddling mass-produced product, and you're actually saying, no, let's rewind this, let's go slow.
I think if one thing the pandemic gave to all of us, right, was to just appreciate life and everything around us, everything we should be caring about, and the appreciation of like just one or two mouthfuls of something delicious is nicer than shoveling in a pile of food that's made in a factory.
Yeah.
And therefore we just have this opportunity to recalibrate, and that's really what I took out of all of it.
I think just time to appreciate the better things in life, you know. And I think a lot of people spent less money on travelling and less money on staying over places and going on holidays, and I think a lot of people did actually increase their sort of, you know, their treats, let's say.
Yeah, I think treats, but also it's like, you know, you suddenly living in your community, and how many people do you speak to and they say, how you doing? Oh man, I'm off here next week, I'm off going here, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Suddenly you had to engage with your community, and you were like, it became your place. I mean, where I live in Brixham, I can't see myself moving from there ever, because I chose it to be my place. And during the pandemic, it became even more my place, and therefore, why do I need to go anywhere else? I mean, there's just not enough. Like, I will travel, of course, but there's something really special about your place, and I think that a lot of people thought that.
Yeah, makes complete sense. So, a new opening with Rockfish in Salcombe?
Salcombe, we're doing Sidmouth, and Salcombe's going to be an amazing one on the end of Island Street. Really beautiful site there. I've always wanted to do it for some time. Sidmouth, we're at the end of the seafront, and I've got this kind of idea in my mind about creating a bar, casual bar, where you can come and have a beer, buy seafood to take away, and choose seafood from the daily catch that's come in, and have it fried or grilled with your pint. And that's something that I'm going to open one of those next year as a trial.
Are you into sort of like the old-fashioned sort of British seafood that used to get in like the vans at the seaside, like your cockles, your whelks, and stuff like that?
Love it.
Do you ever see like mileage in that as bar snacks? Or?
Yeah, I mean, but you know, you I mean, the guys that we talk about with cockles on the East Coast, I mean, again, it's no longer a cheap thing. These are utterly delicious, you know. And I recently tasted some cockles fresh from the Osborne brothers in Leigh-on-Sea, and it was for a competition. And they sent these things over, and they were just freshly cooked meat, and just utterly the most delicious thing. And I've yet to get to their seafood shack. I know millions of people have been over there, but I can't wait to get there and eat it.
Mm-hmm. So are we going to see a Rockfish in London or Birmingham or...
Never.
No.
I mean, my fundamental belief is, like, go to the seaside to eat fish, and the rest of it you can enjoy in your home if it's sent from the coast. I mean, that's the two deals, right? Buy it from the coast, eat it in your home, go to the coast to eat it. Doesn't mean you should never eat it in any other restaurants. They do amazingly well, and do an amazing good job. But for me, that extra 10% of what you're going to enjoy is the magic. And I don't know whether it's... I'm not trying to say that our fish is better than anyone else's. I think it's like a spiritual connection of eating a piece of fried fish, looking at the sea. My God, it tastes better than sitting on a bench with a bus going by. And that's all. There's my phone. And that's just one of those things.
I think you're right. I think there's something about being at the sea and eating fresh seafood. It just feels right, doesn't it? I don't think it feels the same having a steak whilst you're looking at a cow, but there's something about seafood.
But if you opened a steak restaurant on the seafront of any town, and you put a fish restaurant next to it, I don't care how good the steak restaurant was, I can guarantee you the fish restaurant would be the thing that is busier. Because your mind, when you head to the coast, is like, I want some fish, right? You don't think I want a steak.
We was in Cyprus a few years ago, and my uncle really fancied fish. He's dead now, but he loved two things. That was great food and whiskey. And so we all go to a nice restaurant, very well known in Larnaca for seafood. It's on the beach. And we're all sitting outside this fish restaurant, and my cousin goes, "Can I have lamb chops?" And the guy goes, "We don't have lamb chops." He's like, "Yeah, but I really fancy lamb chops." So he goes, "Well, I can ask the restaurant next door if they've got lamb chops." Then he forced him to get lamb chops from next door while we carried on eating great seafood. And you just think, I couldn't do that.
I couldn't do that. I mean, it's just what I think about. I mean, you know, I'm a meat eater too. I love meat. But like anything, you need to eat it in the right places. Yeah. And if I'm going to go and eat meat, I'll go to a restaurant, you know, go to Hawksmoor and eat an amazing steak and just enjoy it and enjoy the fact that I'm eating a fabulous steak in a great place, and that's what I like.
That makes complete sense. So have I forgotten to ask you anything? Because I think we've touched on nearly everything.
Stelios, we've had a great chat. I've loved it, and it's always nice to chat to you. And
are you going to keep us abreast of any news of this?
In January, Stelios, I mean, give me a call, and I'd love to. You know, I'm going to tell you all about this thing, and I hope that in 3 months' time, you know, what we're doing has really worked. Either this is going to be amazing, or we just think it's the best business idea ever. We'll find out. Well, that's the jeopardy and fun of doing it. Right?
At least you're putting your money where your mouth is.
You've got to do this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you for your time today. I think we'll get this wrapped up because I think you need another brandy.
No more brandy, Stelios. I'm that's it. Only mornings. You know, you only need spirit in the morning. But I tell you, what I do need is pee.
Well, on that note, then we better let you go.
Okay.
Thank you, mate.
Bye.
Huge thank you to Mitch Tonks for joining me on the Ceres podcast for a second time. I wish him and his team the best of luck on everything they are working on. Lots of irons in the fire. If you want to follow Mitch or Seahorse or Rockfish, the links will be in the show notes. Be sure to share the Ceres podcast with your friends on social media. If you like this episode, chances are they will too. Also, if you want to join our mailing list, the link will be in the show notes. Have a great day.